Oh, how good's this? The Titans are here on Tuesday night. James Morrow from Sky News and the Daily Telegraph, and similarly of both parishes.
They're basically the same person.
None other than, both will somehow get Albo's call returned quicker, eventually.
This guy,
and Joe Hildebrand.
James and I always end up agreeing with each other.
Yeah, well, let's see.
We have Titans Tuesday
Last night on Channel 2, I tried not to talk about the show that Who Cares anymore, but still, a question from a lady of a certain age and a certain cultural background, well, it got the internet very pissed.
My children, now almost 30 and 34, went to the local state public school and were dictated to that multiculturalism is a great thing. I don't believe it is, as I feel that the culture of the original British/Irish majority has been demonised constantly for the last 3 decades. Case in point, frequent vandalism of memorials to Captain Cook. How does democracy fit into this atmosphere of beat up the white guy?
Well, that was a very hot pepper that she was serving. James, you quite correctly pushed back online today about just like, OK, there is a certain worldview of a certain series of people from a certain period of time that they're allowed to speak.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the whole thing. And, you know, if we look around the world right now, Paul, there's this massive push against free speech. And a big part of that is saying, don't talk about things around immigration, diversity, multiculturalism, you know, because if you do, you're alt-right, you're hard-right. And what happens is you don't talk about the problems that also come with multiculturalism. You know, it's not just all great restaurants and, you know, diversity and, you know, different skin colors. It's actually, there can be cultural clashes. There'll be a lot of other things. You need to talk about them. You need to work them through. And a couple of points that I make, and it's in tomorrow's Daily Telegraph, is that, you know, you can say multicultural society is great, but there's also research that says it fragments people and that it actually leads to lower civic trust. And, you know, the other thing, too, is that when you don't talk about these things, the pressures build up. You get things like those terrible riots in Britain. Correct. And once you say you can't talk about this, well, then things explode.
Well, also, you know, Joe, to me, it is completely acceptable that anyone from everywhere is affectionate about how they grew up.
Yeah, of course,
right?
absolutely.
Regardless of whether it is, you know, the place you're watching us right now or the other side of the world. So I've got no problem with people being affectionate about the way things used to be. Yep. That's just the way naturally human beings are. What I do have a problem with is when somebody, even inartfully, starts to say, well, have we changed for the better or have we changed for the worse, that you can't even ask that fork in the road question because there's a whole series of verbal landmines. What's your sense about some of the overreaction?
I completely agree. I think there's 2 questions here. One is, you know, is she actually right? Well, from her point of view, obviously she is. I'm a huge supporter of multiculturalism, and I don't think so. But more to the point, should she be able to express that view and not be being labelled a racist? Absolutely, of course she should. It is obscene, and not only is it obscene to call someone a racist when they might just be a bit old-fashioned or pining for a world they knew before or nostalgic about the way they grew up, but it is exactly that sort of attitude that makes people like this feel that their culture or that their freedoms are under threat. So you're actually confirming the exact same fears that they're expressing, and it is idiotic and it is also immoral.
Sorry, James.
No, I was going to say, though, Joe, what you just said there gets into this point that I also bring up. You know, they talk about this thing called asymmetric multiculturalism, and that's where we celebrate every other culture, but the dominant Anglo culture here, that has to be, you know, knocked down. We see that all the time, the debates of Australia, the Captain Cook stuff. Anybody who's had a kid go through preschool even and seen how they teach the kids everything about how the land they're on belongs to an Aboriginal tribe, but it's nothing about Australian civics or anything like that. And so it's you can see where this lady's coming from.
But it is the same thing, exactly right. And so the worst thing you can do to destroy a harmonious multicultural society is to say that the dominant culture is illegitimate or to vandalise Captain Cook or to spray paint on the Australian War Memorial or, dare I say, to block a $1 billion gold mine on someone's serious heritage grounds. But again, that is your one way. The minute you're saying, okay, hi, we're multicultural now, and you, the sort of dominant culture that, you know, you're now illegitimate, well, of course that is going to make that dominant culture less accepting of other cultures.
Maybe it's the circles maybe it's the circles that I roll in, but Tim Costello, significant anti-gambling person, has turned around and has said that the challenge facing the Albanese government around advertising of gambling is similar to the challenge of Howard taking on guns post Port Arthur. Now, again, as I said, I might be living in a slightly separate world. I very occasionally bet and lose on these apps. You know, I'm a pokies man. But the sort of puritanical screaming about this issue, does anyone really think that this moment in time is the same as the days after Port Arthur, James?
Well, you know, it's funny. I wasn't here for Port Arthur, although I do remember it when it happened, and it was reported all over the world. It's a very big deal. But, you know, the thing you point there's a puritanical edge to all of this, and it's like, let's just move systematically through every vice, and eventually we're going to get to yours. You know, 100%. Well, they've gone to yours, already. And, you know, like, I'm not a gambler. I don't bet. I don't really like to bet. I do like to go to the horses a couple of times a year. Yep. That's always fun. Also lose a bunch of money. Never mind. But there's this sort of thing where it's like everything that people enjoy has got to have some externality to it. And the thing is, if you ban all of these apps, you know, they're already, the cops in Sydney are raiding illegal casinos again, like they had back in the 60s and 70s.
All I will say is, perfect example about this stuff, right, around draconian, this is okay, this isn't okay. The amount of illegal tobacco and who brings it into the country and all the problems that have come with it, directly linked to the policy of making legal tobacco as expensive as possible to get, right? That's not an argument to say no taxation, whatever. But once you start to move in one direction, the market always finds a different way.
And it's gone gone overwhelmingly to vaping as well, which of course the government is now saying not allowed to.
So are we at Albo's Port Arthur moment?
No, well, in Tim Costello, I quite like Tim Costello.
But it's too much.
He's a lovely man, and in his defence, he is actually quite literally a Puritan. He's a Baptist minister, so he's allowed to be a Puritan. But I think and this is his absolute cause. This is the thing he's been obsessed with his entire life. I think that I think the problem is, firstly, the poker machines are the real problem. I don't think the sports betting is a real problem. I mean, you can manage to lose a lot of money betting on sports, and a lot of people do both, but it strikes me the poker machines are the real ones that just hoover up all your cash, so maybe focus on that. And secondly, I'm just not sure that it's the right time, and I don't think he was making a direct comparison to Port Arthur and saying this is as bad as guns or a killing spree, saying that every once in a while a Prime Minister has to make a moral stand, you know, regardless of the sort of politics of it.
Well, I think that moment is standing up to China. But anyway,
I was going to say, well, I would say very immorally that the time to make a moral stand is not now. All right. So
Lord,
time to make a moral stand is after the next election. If you're
look at you. Look at you. All right. Thank you, lads. Do appreciate it. We'll read you. We'll watch you. We love you. We'll see you all very soon. Thank you.